What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel. I have an awesome product in front of me for our C10. This is a product from Bedwood, and I also have Cody from Bedwood here to help me install it and tell you a little bit about the product. So like I said, I have a product here from Bedwood for our C10, and I have Cody here to tell us a little bit about it. So Cody, what do we have here exactly today? And thank you for coming out, I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So here in front of us, we have our Red Oak Retro Liner kit. These are one of the easiest kits to install. These go together roughly in about an hour to an hour and a half, depending on your different type of vehicle that you're putting it into, as well as your know-how of, just working with different items.
Awesome. Now, as far as the install goes, I know you said it's pretty easy. We should be able to get this done in about an hour, hour and a half. But if someone didn't have a ton of experience with working on their classic truck or vehicle, do you think they would have an easy time doing this or a hard time? I mean, let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the hardest and 1 being the easiest.
With the Retro Liner kit, the biggest thing that's going to be the hardest issue is making sure that you have the correct number of weld nuts in your C-channels. If for some reason you don't, the biggest part is just gonna have to take out the wood, slide in your weld nuts the way that you would need to, and then go from there. So on a scale of 1 to 10 for a first timer, I would say it's probably about a 3 on the hardness chart. If you're used to working with trucks and used to working with your hands, as long as you count it out, it's a 0.
Can't really complain with that. Now, I know this is a Retro Liner kit. How does this compare to your other products that you guys have?
So with the Retro Liner kits, the easiest thing about these is there's no mounting to your pre-existing metal bed.
Okay.
Everything that we actually send from Bedwood is designed to go together with what we send you. So as far as a Bedwood kit versus a Retro Liner kit, the Bedwood kit, you would actually have to remove the pre-existing wood bed, change everything out. It takes a little longer. You're looking roughly probably about a day's worth of work, maybe a day and a half, depending on how much teardown you actually have to do. With the Retro Liner kits, again, all of the hardware is very minimalistic, whereas the Bedwood kit, you have 3 different bolt kits. You have your wood. Depending on if you've gotten it pre-finished or not, you may have to do a few extra things.
Gotcha.
With the Retro Liner kits, these are all pre-finished, ready to go right out of the box. There's nothing you will need to do to this kit in order to get it in except for just install.
All right, well, we're gonna get this thing all unpackaged, then we're gonna jump into the back of the C10 and get it installed. So we're gonna go ahead and start installing this Bedwood kit, but Cody, let us know what we have to do first here.
So first step is to unpackage your C-channel rails. These are going to be what everything actually lays on. So these are gonna go into various locations down your bed. Your strips and your wood will actually lay directly on top of it. There are the weld nuts that we have over here that will actually slide in, that everything actually mounts to. So the first thing is just to get them in a generalistic area. I mean, eventually you're gonna have to move them around a little bit just to get everything put where it needs to go.
Gotcha.
But for the most part, just laying them out in the generalistic areas, that's gonna be your first part.
All right, let's get after it.
So the first thing, like I said, is just to take a few of these out. And again, these are gonna be a little bit, just kind of setting them in place right now.
Okay.
So you have the longer ones that are gonna go, of course, for the fronts and the back. And then the thinner ones, or the kind of smaller ones, those are gonna go between your wheel wells. And so we're gonna actually have probably 2 up towards the top. This is just for your kind of inside and then your back side. Now, there will be something here that we'll install later just as an end cap.
Okay.
So when you actually lay these out, you can just lay these out with a gap in between where the actual door will actually shut. So this is pretty much how it will lay out. The next step in this really is going to be grabbing our weld nuts and just sliding them in.
Okay.
The biggest thing is going to be your outer boards are going to lay first. So we actually want to make sure that we count out the correct number of weld nuts, because that's going to be the biggest issue, especially with the first time install. If you get that incorrect, it's going to be a pain because you're going to have to take everything back out just to go ahead and put more weld nuts in.
Gotcha. Well, I failed math back in high school, so I'll let you do the counting.
All right, sounds good. So the next step from here, now that we actually have our C-channels in, is just taking our weld nuts and just sliding these in. The biggest thing is, again, you want to make sure that the correct count is there. That way, once you actually get started, you'll be able to get everything ready to go. And these, sometimes they do catch. All you have to do is just kind of hit them and they'll kind of loosen up. But these are designed to slide through, so if they do get caught, just pick them up a little bit and they should move. Now with this last one, the last one of your set, what you want to do is you want to make sure to keep that to the outside edge, because what we're going to do is once we actually put the wood in, we will have to maneuver these around. There's going to be a hole that's actually designed for this to set on, and then your bolt will actually be able to go down and lock in place.
All right, so now that we have our wing nuts in, what's the next step?
So the next step is to actually get your first piece of wood in. So what we have is, again, we have a red oak kit here that we're working with. So with this piece of wood, as you can see, there's 3 holes here for our 3 weld nuts and our strip. So what we're gonna do is we're just going to kind of sit this in. All right, so we're gonna sit this in, and then what you'll have to do is just kind of maneuver your setup to where these kind of, where it kind of sticks up actually sits into the hole. So you can kind of tell where you need to be at for the most part, as long as you have your weld nuts in the right spot.
And I know it might be hard to see on camera, but the wood that comes in this kit fits absolutely perfect in the back of our Bedwood C10.
So one thing I would highly recommend is to get a T-handled Allen wrench for doing something with a Retro Liner kit. I can't tell you how many times I've been installing one of these with just a basic Allen wrench, and it is a pain. So with these T-handles, makes going in a lot easier. Plus on top of that, you can actually line up your weld nuts just by sticking it down and getting it ready to go. You also want to make sure that you have a flat washer on these. These are the only ones that the flat washers will actually work with. So once we get ready, I always back it out just a little bit before putting it in, just to make sure that everything lines up correctly. Now with these, the biggest thing is do not wrench down on these. Just tighten it just enough to where it just catches. If you tighten it too much, the big thing that you run into is later on, once you actually get to the center, because you do work you from the outside in, you wind up not being able to move anything. And especially when it comes to that last strip, you want to be able just to kind of move it just a little bit so that everything can shift the way that it's designed to. Just like that. We have the one side in, and then we can go ahead and do the other side the same way. Again, once you actually get that first board in, it should still be able to move just a little bit on both sides. This will allow for that variation. Now with our wood, one thing that we do to make things a lot easier, like you said, sometimes you've got a first-time installer and you're not sure which board goes where. Bedwood has taken that into consideration. On every board, we number it. So with that, 1 starts towards the driver's side, and then 10, because this is a 10 board layout, would be the passenger side. So this one here, you can see it says 10F. This would be the front of the bed and on the far passenger side. And then again, everything is pre-milled, so you're gonna have those variations like what you need for your wheel tubs. Once you get it lined up, you can just drop that in and just move that in place, and it makes things a lot easier. All right, now that we actually have this in place, again, you're just going to put your bolt in, back it out, and just in. And then once you get it tight, just like I said, back it out just a hair. That will, again, allow that maneuverability.
And the only ones that you'll have to worry about this with are the front ones. Once you actually get to the center ones, it's a little easier on that. Now I will say for first time installers, when it gets up to these front bolts, it is a little bit trickier just because you're right up against the bulkhead here. But if you just kind of maneuver your wrench just the right way, you can usually get it in with no issues. But that will be one thing I will say that first time installers will kind of struggle with, is just getting it up against here. You might scratch a little paint if you're not careful. So that's going to be the biggest thing, is, you know, for rustier models, or, you know, dealing with older trucks, you may have to put something there just to keep from scratching that up. So one thing to keep in mind is when you are putting in your wood, putting your weld nuts in place of where you're going to want them before you start with the next piece. Now that we have all of our side pieces in, the next step is to move your weld nuts in place. With these, again, you know, all you have to do is lift them up and move them. But what you want to do is you want to put it just to the side of the edge of the piece of wood that you're working with. And what this is going to do is when we put our strips in, after we get our next strip of wood in, is to, your strip is going to sit over top of this, and it's just going to leave just enough room for that weld nut to sit between each piece of wood. And your bolt will go down between your wood and actually bolt in your strip here.
So now we have our side pieces in, our welded nuts in place. We're gonna go ahead and grab our wheel tub boards and then the strips, put those in, and then work from there.
So now that we have our wood in place, the next thing is going to be actually working with the strips. Now, when it comes to the strips, these are designed to sit in between the wood pieces. As you can see, there are grooves on the actual boards. So these are designed with little lips, basically, to grab onto the wood, and you may have to maneuver it just a little bit to actually have it sit on your truck correctly. And again, one of the reasons why we leave that loose is so that we can adjust things. And then what you'll do is you'll take your bolts and you'll just bolt it down. Now, towards the back, you're going to have an extra hole. That will be the last step that we're going to do. So please don't worry if there's a hole and you're like, there's no aluminum C-channel to mount it to. There's actually an end cap that will make everything look completely uniform. So on these strips, there's also a small little strip of plastic. You can go ahead and peel that off. That's just a protective coating to make sure that your strips do not get scratched up in transit. So again, those are just going to drop down. Now with these, there is a big thing that I always like to tell first timers as well as just everyday people. Do not wrench down on these. These are not designed to be wrenched on. These are designed to go in easily. So once you get them, do not tighten them down quite yet, because again, we are going to have to move these. But when it does come time to tighten these down, the big thing to always remember is when you put them in, tighten and then a quarter turn extra. That's about it. But right now, we're just going to leave them loose because towards the center of the bed, you are going to need to adjust things a little bit as you go through. So what we're doing right now, and again, you know, to reiterate this, we want to work our way into the center. The last thing you should do is lay your last strip in. Okay. So what we're doing here is we're just getting everything in place. Again, these are still loose. You can still move them around. The reason being is because when you do get to that final strip, that strip may be too, or the boards may be too close together or too far apart. You may have to kind of, you know, maneuver things. And that's another thing that at Bedwood we get questions for all the time. You know, why is there a gap in between where the strip goes? You know, if they try to start from the center, work their way out, the holes don't line up correctly. It may look a little wonky. And the biggest thing we tell people all the time, start from the outside, even on our Bedwood kits.
Gotcha.
Start from the outside edge, work your way into the center. That's gonna make sure that your spacing's all 100%, everything goes together correctly. That's one of the reasons why you wanna count out all of your weld nuts ahead of time.
Gotcha.
Make sure if you have a 10 board layout, your big strips get 11 of the weld nuts.
Okay,
Just
awesome.
so that, you know, as you're working your way to the center, you're not having to tear it apart in order to make it work again.
Gotcha. I gotta say, this is already starting to look really good, so I can't wait to actually see the final product once we're all done.
Absolutely.
All right, Cody, so we are getting down to our last board here. Is there anything that we have to do since it's the last piece?
So a lot of times when it comes to the final piece, a lot of people don't realize that, again, there's a reason why we tell people work your way into the center. When it comes to the final board, a few things have to make sure that, you know, are done correctly. So first off, you know, your weld nuts, you want to make sure those are right up against the sides, you know, of where your wood is actually going to be, so that you're not losing your weld nuts. Because as you probably have seen already, you know, those weld nuts do like to slide around pretty easily.
Yeah, I lost a couple during this.
Exactly, and sometimes, you know, you wind up having where you have to, you know, lift the board, move it back out, all of that. So making sure that your weld nuts are all properly placed is important. Once you get it in, you do want to get at least one strip in fully, not tight, but just the same way that we've been doing it, just, you know, tight enough to where it's going to hold it down, but it's not, you're still able to move it back and forth.
Gotcha.
When it comes to that final strip, as you're going to see here pretty soon, we may actually have to adjust a few things with the actual wood, space them out a little bit differently, just so that that strip lays in easy.
Okay.
If you have to force it, it's not in right.
Gotcha.
So it should just drop right in, and then you just tighten it in just as we have been.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, everything else has fit perfect up to this point, so I'm excited to get this last board in and really see how it looks then when it's done.
Absolutely. So again, once we get our weld nuts in, the easiest way to do this is actually to grab your board and just slide it in place. So with, you know, some folks, you know, they're going to be doing this on their own. The easiest way is just to put it in, slide it right up, making sure that you're not sliding into your weld nuts. And then once you get this, again, start on your left side. Your final strip would be right in the center, so we want to make sure that that's the last thing we do. So as you can see right here, we're kind of a little too far in. So again, one of the reasons why we space it out is so that everything can kind of move in to where your strip actually lines up correctly.
That went in perfectly.
Now, a lot of people, when it comes to this part, are afraid to get on their Retro Liner kit. These are designed to be used as actual truck beds. So getting on these things is not going to harm it at all. I would recommend though, if you're going to do this, make sure you have everything out of your pockets. Because the last thing you want to do is get to the final step and scratch up your strips or your wood or whatever it is you're going to work on. So if you have like a knife in your pocket or something like that, you can damage it a little bit. But again, as you can see, it's taking my weight perfectly fine. We actually have a Retro Liner kit that we use regularly at Bedwood. And that thing, we throw bricks, wood, everything else in between. And it still looks just as good as the day we put it in.
That's definitely always good to hear, because now people can have a good looking bed but still be able to use the purpose of their truck and actually load stuff into it and whatnot, so.
Absolutely. A lot of times people ask us, why put a perfectly good metal bed out of commission with a wood bed? Well, one, they look so much nicer.
Oh, way nicer.
And two, you can still use them. And that's where a lot of people don't think about it is, you can still throw metal in this, you can still do everything else. And what people don't realize is with these strips, these are designed to sit above your wood. So where you wind up having all of your weight is actually on your strips.
I mean, what more could you ask for? A good looking bed that still functions like
Absolutely.
a bed,
So what we want to do is at this point, we just kind of want to grab and pull. And what that's going to do is it's going to bring in your wood just enough for your strip to sit down. Just like that, you have it in.
Wow, this looks absolutely amazing. All right, Cody, so now that we got all the boards in and our channels in, what is gonna fill up the end right here?
Unfortunately, nothing. No, I'm just messing, I'm just messing. No, so of course, we don't want you to be able to see up underneath the wood and into the strips and everything. So
yeah, because that part's kind of ugly.
Exactly, why have something so good looking with nothing to finish it off? Again, I had said it earlier, the strips have an extra hole, and I did mention that, there is gonna be something that we do at the end. So what we provide is we have an end cap. So this is what's going to bring everything together, and it's going to close off that back end so that it actually looks just as if it was a factory wood bed.
Gotcha, you won't even notice the metal underneath then.
Right, so these are designed with these little inserts that take the exact same bolt heads that we've been putting in the entire time, and everything is going to completely mount together. So this does not slide around or anything. Once it goes in and it bolts in, it's in.
Sweet, awesome, let's get it in there.
Absolutely. So the way that this goes in, it's just gonna slide directly up underneath the wood, just like that.
Oh wow, that fits so nice.
Yeah, it is designed to fit 100% up against the wood. And then again, you're just going to just bolt it in just like with the rest of everything else. Now, with the strips still being a little loose, you can move things up a bit if it's a little off. But for the most part, this should just go together just like it has been the entire time. And again, right now, we're just kind of putting these in a little loose, just so that we can maneuver things if necessary, which at this point, you shouldn't have to. But again, because we're leaving everything else loose, we just kind of want to leave it loose as well till we start strapping everything down 100%. And again, if we've already tightened just a little bit, you could go back through, just loosen everything up, and then just slide it down the way that you need to.
Okay. So you can make some final adjustments in the end then, it looks like.
Right, that'll be the last step that we do before we actually tighten everything 100%. And when we do tighten it, again, it's very important that you don't wrench down onto it. It's important that you just go tight and then maybe a quarter extra turn, that's it. Reason being is if you tighten too much, what you're gonna do is you're gonna actually divot your strips. And that's the last thing we wanna do. Now that our bed's looking really nice, we don't want to bend our strips down and cause an issue in our strips. All right, and just like that, again, this is going to seal up 100%. Now, a lot of times, people always say, well, what if I want to mount this to my bed? It's designed not to have to. It just floats underneath. You can lift it up. You can do whatever you need to. It's not going to go anywhere. These are roughly around 120 to 150 pounds, depending on the wood species. We do offer, like a really hard foreign wood, such as our Brazilian cherry. That's going to be a heavier wood because it's a lot denser.
Gotcha.
As far as this goes though, this is designed to sit around. You will see a little bit of a gap between the outside. A lot of folks, they're like, why the gap? This is designed so that water actually doesn't just sit on top of your bed, but still flows out just like normal on your bed. You don't have to drill a hole in it. You don't have to do anything separate. It's designed to just sit directly on top, give you that wood look, while still doing exactly what your metal bed is designed to do. So the last thing now at this point is just tighten out all the bolts, and like I said, just a quarter extra turn once it gets tight, and you're done.
All right, cool. Well, I'll get started on that. So Cody, I gotta say thank you for coming out. I really appreciate you coming out, showing us how to install this kit properly. Now that we're all done with it, I gotta say, this kit absolutely looks amazing. I mean, everything fit in here perfectly. There was really no issues besides myself losing some of the wing nuts. But other than that, I mean, we put all this together in about an hour and a half, and I honestly don't think it could have went any smoother.
Absolutely, yeah, these are designed to be as easy as possible. Everything that you need comes in the kit already pre-done. This is a pre-finished kit ready to go. The strips are already pre-punched in the right locations. Your C-channels, all of your hardware is actually counted out there at Bedwood, so that as soon as you get it, there's no guesswork. It's just lay it out, put it down, be done.
Good to go. I mean, seriously, can't complain about that. I mean, an easy kit that almost anybody can do, no matter on their skill level. It's just something you really can't beat. Now, if you'd like to end up purchasing a Bedwood kit for your classic truck, head over to cjponyparts.com to get yours today.